Hey, Seth David here from the world famous Nerd Enterprises Incorporated, and in this edition of Nerd's Guide to the Galaxy, I'm bringing you my debut video on Genius Sheets and how fast is your business going. Now, Genius Sheets is just genius, and I say that, of course, to be funny, but also because it's true, and that's kind of what I want to show you here. So, first, let's talk a little bit about KPI tools and dashboard tools. And a lot of people who know me know that I've never really been a fan of any of these tools that have come out over the years. I've seen a bunch come and go. In general, I found that they were either too limiting or too difficult to use. And I always end up finding my way back to spreadsheets for this kind of thing, because if you learn how to use a spreadsheet, how to write some basic formulas, and nothing complicated, then you can easily create what you need for yourself, and you don't need to rely on a tool that somebody else has built where there are going to be limitations because it doesn't do this, or to do this you have to create 3 custom tables and do all kinds of, jump through all kinds of hoops to get things to work. And I hate that. And it doesn't take much to learn the spreadsheet skills. Enter Genius Sheets, and Genius Sheets has now made it ridiculously easy because I no longer have to run reports in QuickBooks Online, export them, then copy and paste data. It's all dynamically updated, pulled in live from a QBO company file. So first things first, to connect Genius Sheets to your Google account, if you're using Google Sheets, or to your Microsoft account, if you're going to do this with Excel, it works with either one. You'll go to geniussheets.com. I'll give you the link in the description, the write-up of this, so you can click on it and set up Genius Sheets. It's an affiliate link. If you click on it and sign up and pay, I'll be set for life. I'm kidding, but bottom line, I would appreciate obviously using the affiliate link, so they send me a little thank you in exchange for the referral. And now I'm going to show you why I believe so strongly in Genius Sheets as just an awesome tool. So the way Genius Sheets works is once you have connected it to your Google account, and you'll connect it to whichever QuickBooks Online company you need it to access, in Google Sheets you'll find it under Extensions, and you see Genius Sheets, and if I click Main Menu here, it will bring up a sidebar where I can choose the company that I want to access from the drop-down. Right? So you have to connect it directly on their website first, then you'll have access to it here in Google Sheets. I can't speak to exactly how that works in Excel because I don't really use Excel, I use Google Sheets. So once it is connected, and again you can confirm that by looking in the Extensions menu and you'll see it there, now we just have to write a formula. And there's and they give great instructions. The instructions are also right there in the sidebar when you have it popped up, and it shows you how to write the formulas. It's very simple though. You're going to pull data from one of 3 places: either the balance sheet, the income statement, or the statement of cash flows. Right. So the first thing I wanted to do here was I wanted to sort of speak to what I personally like to see in a dashboard, and it's not necessarily what you think. This comes from actual experience. And with my own website where I log in every day, and every day I see my net 30-day sales. And over time, I learned that I had a reaction to that number. As in, when it's over a certain amount, I'm excited. When it's under a certain amount, I'm worried. And anywhere in between, I'm somewhere in between. So the idea being that I realized this is probably the most useful metric, this plus how much cash is in the bank. And with respect to cash in the bank, of course, I have a similar reaction when I look at my balance every day. Over a certain amount, I know I'm comfortable. Under a certain amount, I might start getting a little worried, as in I better do something to bring some money in, right? And I think the reality is, at the beginning of the pandemic, there was a lot of content being created, about cash flow, because obviously that was becoming important to look at and plan for. And I remember sitting in a webinar, and somebody said this, and I agreed, of course, that cash flow solves most problems. And the reality is that kind of premise, that theory, informs the whole basis of what I want to show you here, and what I've come up with for myself, and what I now do for clients when they'll let me, which is to focus on those 2 metrics. Which, when you think about most KPI tools or dashboards, they don't even talk about that. They're looking at stuff that's much more sophisticated. And I'm not saying that stuff isn't valuable or useful. I'm just saying that I think there's something better, more direct, more succinct that we can look at. If my net sales are good, that's going to flow into my cash flow. Then, of course, I need to make sure I can control expenses so that I can keep the cash that has flowed in. Right? That's the problem a lot of small business owners have, is they start making a lot of money, but it goes out the door as quickly as it came in. End of the year comes, they've got this big net income number from the P&L that they're paying taxes on, and they're like, I made all this money, it says I did, I I have to pay all these taxes, but I don't know where the cash is, right? And usually as accountants and bookkeepers, we just have to go show them all the distributions they took out all year. And then it kind of jogs their memory, like, oh, wow. So anyway, the idea is to build a strategy for our clients around not taking everything out and putting focus on that cash balance on a daily basis over a 30-day period is a really good way to do that. And Genius Sheets makes this so ridiculously easy to do it, and to do it automatically and dynamically. Okay, so let's take a look at what I've created here. First thing is the date range. Now what I did here was I entered in a formula that says we're going to take today's date minus 30 days. So I happen to be recording this on February 1st, 2023. So it backdates this essentially to January 2nd, 30 days ago. Every column thereafter just takes the one to the left and adds 1. So that's how I get my perfect range for the last 30 days, all the way up through and including today. Then over here, I just wrote a formula saying, give me the average. So on average, we had $87,000 in the bank. The threshold I set where I'd like to see the balance always at a minimum is $100,000, which means that on average we were short about $13K. Now to me this is really useful information. I can look at this with my client and say, okay, we need to bring up our average cash balance by about $13K per month. It might be that we go through our expenses and see if we can find $13,000 in expenses that we don't really need to pay for, things that we don't really need to pay for that we're not using. Sometimes if that hasn't been done or hasn't been done in a while, that's one way to free up maybe even just a few thousand. And then of course the other side of that is how do we increase revenues? Maybe we need to do something to do a promotion. For me and my business, oftentimes that means let's build an email campaign and promote some product, and I'll offer a coupon code to help bring in some extra money if I feel like I need to. So that's how we look at the cash balance. And what I'm doing here is I'm dynamically pulling in the checking account balance using the formula. So instead of walking through what's already been created, let's start from a blank, and I'll show you how to build this really quick. Okay, so I'm going to cheat a little bit and copy and paste my descriptions here. Okay, so over here I'll put account, and I'll just paste values. And now let's set up our date range. So equals today, open and close parentheses. That tells the spreadsheet to pull the time off of the clock and tell us what today's date is. Okay, so I do that. It indicates that we're at February 1, 2023. I'll click back in there, minus 30. So it backdates that by 30 days. And then I'll go immediately one cell to the right, equals, left arrow to point to that, plus 1. All right, copy. So Control C, Control Shift right arrow will automatically select the whole range to the right as far as it can go. Control V to paste. I don't have quite enough. I need to get back to today. So I'll highlight a bunch of these columns here. Just click and drag with my mouse. Right click, insert 7 to the right. And I need 6 more here. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Oops, 1 more. And 1 more. And let's add in another couple of columns just so we have a little bit of breathing room there. And that should work. Okay, now let's pull in the checking account balance. So with Genius Sheets, the formulas are slightly different between Google Sheets versus Excel. Like I said, so when you get to this part, if you don't remember, you'll pull up that main menu, and you'll see Genius Sheets does a great job of providing you with instructions that remind you exactly how to write this formula that I'm about to show you. So if it's a checking account, it's coming off the balance sheet. That's the key thing you need to know here. So equals capital GS, and then as soon as I start that, it gives us the tip. So, and here you can see it. BS is for balance sheet, CF is for cash flow, IS is for income statement. So I want balance sheet, and then it wants a few pieces of information. I need to tell it where the category is. Right, so I'll say I want that, comma, and it needs a start and end date. Now, since here I'm looking at a daily amount, then I'm just going to use the same date for both. So start date, comma, end date, same thing, close parentheses. There are a couple of other things you can include in the formula which we don't need for our purposes today. Okay, and now I want to copy this formula all the way across. So I just want to make sure that I hold the column reference, to column B, constant in the formula. So I put a $sign in front of that, and I can copy that all the way across. And obviously when it says loading, that's Genius Sheets doing its thing. It's talking to QuickBooks Online and pulling it. And what it does is it just pulls an index between the date I gave it and the category. So the categories, the account names, have to be exact. You can't go renaming account names here in the spreadsheet. It will cause the formulas to crash or not work. Okay. Now I'll just put in the cash threshold was 100,000. And once I establish that here in the first month, I'll just set every other month thereafter equal to that. Control Shift right arrow. And now we calculate the under over. So I want to take the cash balance minus the threshold so that when I'm under the threshold, that comes out negative. And once again, I can copy that across. Okay. Now we're going to do the same thing for the income statement accounts. So equals GS underscore IS, open parentheses, and from here it's the exact same thing. So we're just telling it in the formula which financial statement we need to pull the data from that we're looking for. I'll click there, comma, there, and there again. And this one we have to do a couple things before we can copy and paste because we want to copy both across and down. So we still need the B constant. And then when I copy down, I want row 1 as the reference for where the data is to remain constant in both cases. So once I do that, I can copy. Now be careful not to do it for the total. We're going to calculate that ourselves. And then I can copy down 2 rows for the discounts and allowances. And now I can write my formula. You can, by the way, write a formula that grabs the total, but the total row here has to have the exact account that or name that follows the word total. So I didn't do that when I set this up because I didn't feel the need to, but then I actually asked Trevor, who's one of the co-founders, if it could do that, and he said, yep. And once again, I said, that's genius. So now everything's loading, okay? Then the net sales is going to be, now net discounts and allowances is what's called a contra income account, which means it's going to be negative. So to get from the total to the net sales, I want to add them, right? Because I want to add a negative number to a positive number. So sum of those two, so get this. And then the net sales threshold we're going to say is 5,000. Remember, this is daily. Set that equal. Copy and paste across. And then again, the under over that minus that. Okay, and now we've got our deal. So let's say I want to just make these bold. Okay. So let's make these stand out a little bit. I'm not going to go too deep into the formatting. I have a whole course on that. It's Google Sheets Deep Dive. I'll link it up in the recording. You'll have hours of training on how to do all kinds of things with spreadsheets, including a whole lesson on just formatting. So I don't want to take time up to go into that here. But the basic stuff we can certainly do. And now you have it. And what's going to happen is tomorrow, if I go into the spreadsheet, this date is going to update to January 3rd, and everything there forward is going to update, and all the data is going to pull in dynamically. So this will update automatically every single day. Of course, we have to keep QuickBooks up to date, but that's another story. So the next question is how to get the charts going. So let me show you a quick way to do this. It's going to look ugly, but for this purpose, so we could create one chart and then just kind of copy it, I'm going to delete the extra row here that I had between the balance sheet stuff and the income statement stuff. And once I make that change, Genius Sheets wants to recalculate everything. So let's give it a minute to let it do that. Perfect. So now what we're going to do is we're going to select this whole range, right? And by the way, how I did that so quickly, I start at the top left part, Control Shift right arrow, Control Shift down arrow, whole range is selected, insert, chart. And at first it's going to be messy, right? But the idea is we've got everything in here, and based on the layout that I gave it, it knows exactly how to plot everything. So I've got my dates on my x-axis, which is perfect, right? I've got my amounts on the y-axis, and I've got the right labels here. So first, let's double-click this and just call this cash, right? Then let's go to the right here, and under Setup, I'm going to click this ellipsis on this one, and we're going to remove everything. Okay. And then we are going to add a series. Right, so let's add series. and it went and added something for me. Let's try that again. Add. And for cash, I just want the bank account, and I want the cash threshold. Done. Now, there's one other thing. Notice how it gave me just a limited date range here. So on the x-axis, if I click aggregate, boom, it gives me everything. I'm going to update my labels there, and I can resize this to make it a little easier to read and look at. Okay, so now I've got my chart based on the data above that helps me at a glance look at my cash. And to create the sales one, I'm simply going to click this ellipsis. We're going to copy the chart. So I can click here and click Control V to paste it. Okay, and I'll double click the chart anywhere like near the top. Be careful, if I double click like on a label, it's going to take me to edit that label. I wanted to get into the general setup. And over here, we're just going to change out the series. So I'm going to remove that, and we're going to add net sales and net sales threshold. And now, of course, we want to update the label. And just be careful, Google Sheets can be a little touchy. There it is. So there's the title text. We're going to call this net sales. Okay, let's scroll over to the right. Okay, and now I do want to double click right here. So it takes me exactly where I need to update that label. So this is net sales, and net sales threshold, which is already there, is perfect. And again, I don't need to do the aggregate thing here because I copied it over from the other one, which already had that done. And obviously, as I make it bigger, it spreads things out. And now, again, I've got a clear visual over the span of the last 30 days of how my sales compared to where I want them to be. Now that this is done, apart from maybe doing the formatting to make it look pretty like I've done here, you've got a perfect, completely dynamic dashboard, which as long as you're updating QuickBooks Online every day in the bank feeds, which if you do it every day, by the way, should take just a few minutes. You use rules to code things in the bank feeds. It should be very quick. And all I have to do is open this up. Genius Sheets, from what I understand, automatically refreshes the data every 30 minutes or so. So, by the way, if you change an account name in the chart of accounts, you'll have to update it accordingly here. And when you do that, it might take 30 minutes before it shows up in your spreadsheet here. So the formula will look like it's not working until it's really refreshed the data. But in the meantime, every day, automatically, dynamically, this will update based on the date range being dynamic, and it will pull in the updated data for each day of the last 30 days. So at any given time, and I recommend looking at this daily even, but if not, certainly weekly, or this is what I would have my client do, so that we can just keep tabs on this and get a sense of where things really land. We might have arbitrarily thrown in 100,000 as the cash balance threshold that we were looking for, and sales of 5,000 daily here might have been arbitrary. At the beginning, that's the best you're going to be able to do. Then over time, you'll start fixing this. You'll start updating. You'll start saying, no, you know what? Where I'm landing on is, I really want at least 15,000 a day in sales, and I want my cash balance to be maybe 100,000 is perfect, right? So I can look at this and say, okay, this is what a dashboard should do. When I'm driving my car and I'm going fast, the dashboard kind of lets me know when it's time to slow down. And that's what this does. It lets me know when I need to fill the tank in terms of the cash. I look at this, I say, okay, we need to look more closely. Now I can look at the numbers and say, all right, well, where are we, right? We're out here, it's January 12th, and we're short $10,000 from our threshold, right? Go out further, or like I said earlier, we look at the average. Say on average, we need about 13,000 more per day in the account to be covered, to hit the threshold that we need. So the point is, this is a dashboard that's simple. It's not overwhelming us with information. It gives us very, very quick data at a glance that in an instant I know that I need to do something, that I want to do something. So I can look at this information really quickly and say, okay, well, I need to get sales up. But if on average I need 13,000 more in cash, then that actually might help me decide, what my sales threshold should be in order to help me reach that, right? So I might actually say, okay, let's increase this. Let's say now the target sales, the sales threshold would be 13,000 more than what we've got now, which is 5,000, brings us to 18,000. Let's just make it 20. Okay, and now we have a call with marketing, and we say, hey, marketing, we need to come up with some ideas to bring in some more sales. And then we look at our profits and see out of every sale, how much do we get to keep? Because however much of that we can keep is going to help us figure out how much closer each sale gets us to our cash threshold. This is how you build a real actionable strategy using a dashboard that clients can actually use that's not going to overwhelm them. And at the same time, it's going to give you live actionable data. That, my friends, is what a KPI tool or a dashboard tool should do. I don't believe any of the ones out there really do a great job of it. And this is something you can build on your own for probably a fraction of whatever you're paying for any KPI tool. You just have to pay for Genius Sheets. And as I said, it's genius. It works perfectly and it makes life very easy. I am now, of course, using this tool for all of my forecasting to do my variance analysis because it's much, much easier to do with Genius Sheets in a spreadsheet than any tool that I know of that does forecasting. So that's my story, and I'm sticking to it. As always, I hope you had some fun here. I hope you learned something along the way. I hope you're having an absolutely fantastic day, and I look forward to seeing you in the galaxy.